Butler. I'm going to be your facilitator for this evening. Tonight, you're going to be receiving a presentation on the scope and the content of the draft environmental impact report that's being prepared for the design level geotechnical investigations that are associated with the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project. Before we begin the presentation, we'd like to give you a few tips on how to use the Zoom platform. That'll include kind of how different parts of it work. So with that, let me turn this over to Mike Potter. Mike is the Community Outreach Supervisor with Valley Water, and he'll cover that information for you.
Thank you, Lisa. Some direction here on Zoom. It's been a while since we've done a virtual meeting. So should you have difficulty hearing the audio, or if you have unstable internet connection with your audio, you can call in using the number in the chat and using the meeting ID that was provided with your outreach materials. In the audience feedback section of the meeting, you can provide feedback through the Q&A portal in the toolbar. So if your screen's wide enough, you'll see the Q&A button, and that would be the best way to submit a question, a comment. You can also use the raise your hand function on the toolbar to provide your feedback verbally. Once you raise your hand, we can enable your microphone so you can unmute yourself during the comment portion. And now I'll hand it back to Lisa.
Thank you, Mike. Right now, I'll go ahead and give you a quick overview of the plan for this evening and what we're going to be covering. First of all, we're going to be hearing from the Valley Water Board Vice Chair, Richard Santos, and Richard's on screen right now. He chairs the Water Supply and Demand Management Committee. He'll be making some opening remarks. We'd like to also acknowledge there are a couple of other directors online with us, and thank you so much for being here this evening. We'll then receive our main presentation, and then from there, we'll have a moment afterwards for questions of clarification. And then after that, we'd really like to receive your scoping comments. So as a reminder, those scoping comments can be emailed or sent by regular mail. One of the things that we do want to flag for you is for your remarks to be fully considered, you need to make sure that you provide written comments. So that means you'll be either emailing in information or sending a regular written submittal about that. So we'll be hearing from you this evening to get a feeling for what you're interested in. And also, it will be really important for you to get us that information after this meeting in terms of your formal comments. One of the other things that we also want to note is that in terms of the questions and the comments, once again, those will be questions of clarification and then comments. So with that, I am most pleased to turn this over to Vice Chair Santos, and the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you, Lisa. And of course, thanks to everyone who is joining us tonight for your interest in the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project. The Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project can help us weather future severe droughts. Because of this and many other benefits, we are evaluating the project as part of the Water Supply Master Plan update. Our staff is conducting a geotechnical analysis for the Pacheco project to gather data and facts to help us make an informed decision. These investigations will help gather information about the soil and rock conditions at the site. I hope you find tonight's presentation informative. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We want to hear from you about this aspect of our work at the Pacheco Reservoir. And with that, I'll hand it back to Lisa. And again, thank you all for taking the time. Thank you,
Vice Chair Santos. And once again, we would like to acknowledge that there are other directors online with us, so thank you for that. I'm going to be turning this over to Ryan McCarter. He's the Deputy Operating Officer with the Dam Safety and Capital Delivery Division. He's going to be making the presentation. In addition, if you would like to download the presentation, it is available now on the website, the project website, and we're going to go ahead and drop that in the chat for you. So if you'd like to click, and if you'd like to follow along, you can go ahead and download that presentation to do that. So with that said, I'll just go ahead and let Ryan launch into it, and then we'll be hearing from you after his presentation.
Thank you, Lisa, and good evening, everybody. And thank you for attending tonight's scoping meeting. And I'll be giving a presentation on the design level geotechnical investigations for the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project. So important to note, this is separate than the large Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project and only for the design level geotechnical investigations. Okay, so first I'm going to go through the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, and talk about the process that we're going through here, just to give some background. And this slide kind of walks through the different steps that we go through on CEQA for projects. And starting off with the initial study, which is something we already performed for this project work. And we provided that earlier this year. And we also put our notice of preparation, or NOP, out on October 1st of this month, which started our 30-day public and agency comment period, which ends on October 30th of this month. So that's where we're at right now, is this third step. And then into the scoping meeting and the remainder of the 30-day comment period. And so what we're trying to do at this stage here, shown in blue, is consider the scoping comments received, identify any other feasible alternatives, help describe the baseline conditions, identify potential effects, determine significance, and develop mitigation measures. So that with all that information, we'll then draft an environmental impact report, or EIR. And once that is ready, we'll release that for public review on a 45-day public comment period. And once we gather all of the comments from that comment period, we'll prepare our responses to each of those comments from the draft EIR, revise the draft EIR as necessary, and finalize our mitigation measures, and then release our final EIR. So that'll be the final EIR that comes out for the design level geotechnical investigations. And once we have that done, we will take that to our board of directors and recommend a certification of that. And then if it is certified, we will file a notice of determination for completing that CEQA process for these investigations. So the purpose of this meeting, again, is really to solicit input from the public and agencies and help us kind of provide an orientation and update on what the design level geotechnical investigations part of the project is, and just kind of get more content that we can add into the draft EIR before we develop it. But like I mentioned, there will be another chance for public input once the draft EIR is released. So just going over some of the project background here, and we're going to go over the location and what kind of the objectives of the work for this project is. Here's the project location shown down below, the study area. You can see it's along the Pacheco Creek corridor here, about 8 miles west of San Luis Reservoir, and about 20 miles east of Gilroy along the Pacheco Pass Highway, State Route 152. And the objectives of this project are to provide additional geotechnical data, or kind of geologic data, for the design of the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project. And that is listed down below, all the different features of the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project, or the PREP, as we call it. And you can see all the different elements there, and that's to really develop the design. And then also the last bullet there for channel restoration and sediment management. The information we'll get from this investigation will also help us develop some of the environmental pieces of the design, and also input that into our large project EIR as well, and how we restore the channel upstream of the existing dam and downstream of where the new dam site is proposed. Okay, so there's a kind of a shot there, aerial view of the existing dam and reservoir. And we'll talk about the proposed project here, the design level geotechnical investigations. So it's really broken into two components. We call them surface geotechnical surveys. So these are activities that are done really just on the surface of the land. And we're proposing one electrical resistivity imaging survey line. So that'll give us kind of almost like an X-ray of what the ground looks like using electrical resistivity technology. And then we'll be doing 19 seismic refraction survey lines. So that's what we're proposing to do. And those are a little bit different, using kind of an impulse and more like a radar, like making an impact at the surface, and then the instruments measure the bounce back of the refraction, so you can kind of get an idea of what the ground looks like without digging into it. And then we have subsurface geotechnical investigations. So these are categorized into two categories: exploratory test pits, which is really just taking an excavator or backhoe and digging a hole in one place. And that's kind of a good way to gather bulk samples of the soil beneath the ground surface and analyze that for various uses. And then also we'll be doing up to 149 exploratory borings, which is basically drilling into the ground using drill rigs or coring rigs to cut through the rock and sample that rock and assess its properties for geotechnical design purposes. So of those 149 borings proposed, there are 119 sites planned, and then we have also 30 supplemental sites planned as well. And we'll only do the supplemental borings if we deem that information is needed. So I'll show a map in a few slides that shows sort of the mixture of the initial and supplemental borings. This map shows the surface geotechnical survey. So the seismic refraction lines are shown in purple, and the electrical resistivity line is shown in this kind of teal blue color up above on the screen here. And roughly the proposed upstream dam site is right here. If you can see my cursor, there's one seismic refraction line cutting through that, and it's all kind of in this area where the electrical resistivity line is. So a little bit more detailed information on the subsurface geotechnical surveys here. The exploratory test pits are mainly going to be used to explore a borrow area and look at that borrow area for potential dam core or material for the design of the new proposed dam. And that's kind of like a clayey material that we're looking for and trying to assess how much is in that area. And these test pits average about 400 square feet. So it's really, we try to keep it as small as possible and just dig in one area, but there's reasons why we have to slope them back so that people can get in and gather the samples and things like that. So that's kind of the rough area that they do disturb at the surface. And the exploratory borings, so these will be, drilled deep to gather information underneath the ground. And the approximate disturbance area is about 4 square feet. So it's really a hole that's like 6 to 12 inches in diameter, drilled down from the surface. And then really the disturbance is really just at that hole. At 25, about 25 of the boring locations, there's going to be some permanent monitors put in, basically monitoring groundwater through use of piezometers. So we can look at the groundwater changes over time. We've got some out there already, and it's really useful information to see what the underground water system looks like. And then also inclinometers would be installed at 4 of the locations as well that monitor ground movement. So there's some slopes that have suspected creep movement, like landslides, and we'll use those to detect any of the movement over time as well. So those instruments will be installed at the same locations where those boreholes are done for gathering samples. And this is the map that shows the proposed subsurface geotechnical survey locations. So the exploratory borings are shown in green. This inset on the left shows the area near Kaiser-Etna Road. So there's some borings along the road there for some proposed improvements along the highway. And then over on the right, this is kind of the larger project map. You can see most of the borings are centered around the proposed dam site for prep on the North Fork Pacheco Creek here. And you can see the supplemental exploratory borings are shown in this blue color. So you can see those are kind of mixed in with the green. So the green would be done first, and then we would assess how many of the blue ones need to be done. And then down here, you see the area where most of the test pits will be in this magenta color along this hillside, which was the proposed core zone borrow area. Okay, so next I'm going to go through the project impacts that we'll be assessing in the EIR. So just breaking down some of the different activities I just described and what the effects of those activities are, starting with the electrical resistivity imaging survey. So it's minimal disturbance, it's temporary at the surface from the cable and the electrode placement. The seismic refraction survey lines, also a temporary disturbance from the cable and the geophone placement. Those go in a very shallow stake that gets placed into the ground along those lines. The exploratory test pits, so that's also a temporary disturbance, digging that hole and then backfilling it right after we're done with it, back to the same surface and grade condition that it was originally in. And the borings themselves don't have any major impacts, except for there will be some shrub trimming and tree trimming to make room for field equipment and helicopters to get into the areas where the borings are and do those exploratory work. It's pretty dense vegetation, one of the areas in particular. And there's also some permanent effect on about 30 small to medium diameter trees that will have to be removed as part of this project. And then we also have personnel and equipment access that we're looking at. So in order to access these locations, there's overland access routes through grasslands and woodlands. We're trying to minimize that as much as possible. This is something we looked at before, trying to not do any grading activities to build new roads in the area, and instead using helicopters to move equipment. So that's something that we're doing to try to reduce the impacts there. Okay, so going through some of the resources that we're going to be analyzing for impacts. So the physical environment resources, we listed them here: air quality, energy, geology and soils, greenhouse gas emissions, hazards and hazardous materials. So this has an asterisk because we do anticipate some mitigation as a result of the initial study that was already performed. And then we also have hydrology and water quality, mineral resources, and wildfire. And again, that asterisk, you'll see this on several of the bullets as we move through the slides, that has already been identified for potential mitigation. The biological resources we'll be looking at: special status plants, special status wildlife species, sensitive natural communities, and aquatic resources. And also effects on the human environment, including aesthetics, agriculture and forestry, land use and planning, noise, population and housing, public services, recreation, transportation, as well as utilities and service systems. And you can see on the right photo there, that's an image of what a helicopter drill borehole location looks like. So setting up a temporary deck to even out the slope, and then the drill rig sits on top of that. And then once it's completed, all that equipment is removed, and you're just left with a small disturbance area where the borehole was. Also, one of the other resources or two we'll be looking at are cultural and tribal cultural resources as part of the analysis. Okay, so that brings us to the scoping comment process. So again, we're really looking to gather information from the public and agencies to identify information to be included in the draft EIR, including environmental impacts and cumulative analysis, as well as range of alternatives and mitigation measures. So that's kind of what we're hoping to gather. And as Lisa mentioned, the comments can be sent either by letter or email, but we really would like to have these in writing so that we can properly include them in the draft EIR, and then also when we do have the final EIR shown them there. So that's kind of the process, and the scoping comment period ends for this on October 30th of this month. And if there's any additional info as you ponder this, we can email Todd Sexauer, our senior environmental planner, shown at the email address there, and you can put in the subject line DLGI questions, separate from comments. So appreciate that. And of course, we have our project webpage with lots of information about the project. Okay, that concludes the presentation. So we can now take any questions for clarification on what was presented this evening, or you can also provide your scoping comments verbally. But again, we do ask that they are submitted in writing as well. Thank you. Lisa, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. You'd think after all this time on Zoom, I would know that. I'll have you back up, if you wouldn't mind, once again to the scoping comments slide. That's the one that lists the types of things that you're looking for specific information. And as a reminder to the group, there are 2 ways to participate this evening. You can use the question and answer button, or you can also raise your hand. We have received a couple of questions already. One of them just had to do with the attendance this evening, and we have a little over 30. It's kind of gone up and down, but right now it's at about 30 people that are online with us. In addition, this will be recorded. It will be put online. So we do expect many other people will see it when they look at it online. So that was the first question. And then I believe, Jose, you were going to help me with kind of going over some of the questions that might be submitted.
Yes. The question that we have here is, are there any changes to the proposed project compared to the project analyzed in the MND?
So Ryan, does that go to you?
Yeah, I can answer that. No, there's no proposed changes to what was provided in the initial study in MND. We're looking at the same geotechnical investigation plan. Of course, we'll be doing additional analysis as required on the EIR process, but there's no changes to the project itself.
Great, thank you. And Jose, are you seeing additional questions?
Here, we have another question here. And this is in reference to submitting comments. This is, what happens after I submit a written comment? Will you provide a response?
Yeah, so what we'll do is incorporate them into the draft EIR. So that's where the response will be found. And Todd, our senior environmental planner, is on here, and he can weigh in and give a little bit more detail if there is any on that process.
Sure. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so we'll take
I'm going to take a minute, and Todd, could you introduce yourself to the group?
Oh, sure. Yeah, my name is Todd Sexar. I'm senior environmental planner for the project with Valley Water. I was just going to elaborate on what Ryan had said. So the comments will be received in writing, and we'll consider those during the preparation of the draft EIR. Depending on what the comments are, we'll do our best to incorporate those into the scope of the document for the analysis. So, there won't be a direct response to it, but we'll consider the content of the EIR when reviewing those comments, if that helps.
You mentioned MND, and that is, what does that stand for?
Oh, mitigated negative declaration?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sure.
Water people are famous for using acronyms. All right. And I'm going to go back to Jose and have him ask the next question.
Next question is, can you explain how the timing of this EIR relates to the timing of the EIR EIS being prepared for the whole dam project?
Yeah, I can answer that. So the timing of this EIR will be before the EIR EIS being prepared for the larger Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project. We're anticipating hopefully getting the draft EIR out by the end of this year or early 2025 for the design level geotechnical investigations.
And Ryan, can you maybe explain to us, I think we all know what an EIR is, but what is an EIS?
That's an environmental impact statement. So that's part of the NEPA process, or the National Environmental Protection Act. That's the kind of our federal component of environmental oversight, similar to CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act.
Great, thanks so much. And you got something else in the queue?
So we have another question here. How long is this work expected to last? When is the geotechnical work expected to start?
Yeah, that will depend on when we get the draft EIR completed, and then also the process of developing the final EIR. We won't be doing the work unless we have a certified final EIR. So it's kind of a bit of a guess, but hoping that takes place next year. And it's several months of work to do all of the borings, and that's all dependent on the availability of resources, drill rigs, equipment, labor to do the work. So
So, what else is in our mix? And then, I think we have one more. Am I misreading that, Jose?
Yes, we have one more here. The question reads, in your presentation, you discussed test pits and borings. How did you determine the number of borings and test pits needed for this project? And how deep are these borings?
So the borings range in depth, typically 40 feet to up to about 300 feet, I believe. We've got some of our engineers on the call as well that are heavily involved in the actual geotechnical investigation work. And the test pits are really to gather the bulk samples of the material and really have a good look at materials near the surface. But really how that's determined is just in practice in geotechnical engineering. There are guidelines for types of design that require a certain amount of boreholes in an area to characterize it, but it also has a lot to do with the anticipated site conditions. So we can go into a whole diatribe on geology, but sites in the Bay Area have pretty complicated geology. So we are looking at quite a few boreholes here to hopefully gather the information we need. But that's been a pretty elaborate process of review and analysis, looking at different cross sections of the area and what we need to find out and kind of confirm underneath the surface.
Great, thank you. And we once again wish to appreciate the directors. We've had a couple of them that have been coming and monitoring this meeting with us. So could we talk a little bit? I'm not seeing any additional online questions. So what types of comments, and maybe this goes to you or to Todd, but what kinds of comments are helpful for you in a scoping process? What kinds of feedback would you be able to use, or how does that process work?
I would say that something that we're hoping to get is just things that we don't already know. Simply put, from the local residents, people that are really familiar with the site. Maybe there's some old dirt roads or trails or things we don't know about, or something that we need to consider in the way the land is used. We're pretty familiar with the site at this time, and we've been out there for a few years doing various field investigations. So I think we have a good handle on it, but just any input to really help us develop this as best as possible is what we're looking for. And Todd, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that at all. Feel free.
I think that's really helpful, Ryan. Basically, we have a scope of work that for the content of the document, and so, anything that we may have missed is, those are the kinds of things that, based on familiarity that the public has, those are the kinds of things, the input that we're looking for.
Great, thanks so much. I'm not seeing any additional questions. We do want to remind folks that if you would like to ask a question verbally, all you have to do is raise your hand and we'll be happy to call on you. So I'll just kind of take a moment there and see if there's anyone that would like to weigh in at all. And I think that was very helpful. Thank you so much for explaining a little bit more about what kinds of things are helpful in the scoping comment. So that gives you some direction.
Yes, Lisa, and just for folks to know, I in the chat box put in Todd's contact info as to where people need to send in their written comments, along with his email and address. And also right above that is also a link to the Pacheco project page, where people can get more information about the project. And also there's the PowerPoint that was shared today is uploaded to that project pages. And then on Monday, we will have a recording of this meeting, so that if people want to go back and review something or don't remember what was said, that recording will be there for them to look at as well.
That's great, thank you. And I think that speaks to also the question about the number of people attending. It's fairly common for an evening meeting like this for people to actually watch the recording later. That's a pretty typical thing. So we're not inclined to make you all stay online with us if there aren't any additional questions, but I don't want to rush. So if there's anything else that people would like to offer into the space this evening, that would be great. We'd love to hear that. And if not, what we'll be doing is in a few minutes, then we'll be stopping the recording and going ahead and letting you all move on to the rest of your evening. And then we will stay online. Jose and I will stay online. And in the event anyone happens to join afterwards, after this period, until 7 o'clock, we'll stay online. We'll let them know about the availability of the PowerPoint and the availability of the recording. So that's our basic game plan. Vice Chair Santos, thank you again for being here. Did you have any last thoughts to bid the group adieu?
Well, thank you, Lisa, and of course, and Jose and Ryan and our staff does a great job. And, you know, we're trying to do the best we can to make sure all issues are addressed. This way we can save future funding and make sure we have a good environmental sound project. And I really appreciate all your work, and the listeners. Believe me, our staff does a great job in representing everybody here. So thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. And I will give the group some late breaking news. One of the engineers has let me know that the boring depth, maximum boring depth was 375 feet. So with that, I think that might be a good point to stop the recording. And as mentioned, Jose and I will stay online in the event anyone joins us in the next 30 minutes. But we also thank you all for your time this evening. So have a great rest of your day. All right, it's 6:59 right now, and we'd like to appreciate that we've had 2 people stay online with us. We're going to be closing the meeting in just a minute here, and just once again want to thank everyone for participating. This recording will be available next Monday online, and we hope you have a great rest of your evening. Thank you again, Jose, for supporting the meeting. Take care.